I once had everything: a thriving career, true love, family. Then, in a single night, it was all stolen by the very people I trusted most. They thought I was broken, vanished from this world forever. But they were wrong. I've returned to this city that witnessed my downfall, stronger and more powerful than they could ever imagine. This time, I won't leave a single thing for them. Not their reputations, not their fortunes, not even the ground they stand on. They took everything from me. Now it's my turn. My name is Madeline Carter. And 3 years ago, I thought I had built the perfect life in Redwood City, California. At 34, I was a senior associate at Westbridge and Hale, one of the most prestigious law firms on the West Coast. The ocean breeze that swept through the downtown high-rises each morning felt like a promise of endless possibilities. I'd grown up in the mountains of Colorado, where my parents taught me that hard work and integrity would carry me anywhere I wanted to go. They were right, or so I believed then. After graduating from Stanford Law, I'd climbed the corporate ladder with determination that impressed even the senior partners. My office on the 23rd floor overlooked the Pacific, and every sunrise reminded me how far I'd come from that small mountain town. Daniel Hayes entered my life like he belonged there. We met at a charity gala 2 years into my tenure at the firm. He was charming, ambitious, a real estate developer with eyes that sparkled when he talked about transforming the city's skyline. Within 6 months, he'd proposed at our favorite restaurant overlooking the marina. And I'd said yes without hesitation. We were planning a summer wedding at his family's vineyard in Napa Valley. Then there was Rebecca Sloan, my Rebecca, my best friend since my first day at Westbridge and Hale. She'd started as a paralegal, and I'd mentored her through law school, celebrated when she passed the bar, and insisted the partners hire her as an associate. We were inseparable. Thursday wine nights at her apartment, weekend trips to Big Sur, sharing every triumph and setback. She knew my computer passwords, my deepest fears, my biggest dreams. I trusted her with my life. My days were filled with high-stakes mergers and acquisitions, deals worth hundreds of millions. The partners were grooming me for equity partnership, the youngest in the firm's history. They hinted I'd just successfully closed the Hartman Industries acquisition, a deal that would net the firm 8 figures in fees. The celebration dinner was planned for Friday night. Daniel would pick me up in his Tesla, wearing that navy suit that made his shoulders look impossibly broad. Rebecca would meet us there, probably arriving late with some hilarious excuse about San Francisco traffic. We'd toast with champagne that cost more than most people's monthly rent, and I'd think about how lucky I was. I had my health, my career, a man who loved me, a friend who understood me, and parents who called every Sunday to hear about my week. My investment portfolio was growing steadily. I'd been smart with my bonuses, saving and investing nearly 40% of my income. The wedding planner had just sent over the final menu selections. My dress hung in our walk-in closet, a Vera Wang creation that made me feel like royalty. Life in America's tech coast was demanding but rewarding. 60-hour weeks were standard. But the adrenaline rush of closing deals, of being at the center of Silicon Valley's legal ecosystem, was intoxicating. I thrived on the pressure, the competition, the knowledge that I was building something substantial. Every morning, I'd rise at 5:30, hit the Peloton in our condo's home gym, shower with my favorite lavender body wash, and dress in one of my carefully selected power suits. Daniel would kiss me goodbye as he left for his office in Palo Alto. I'd grab my coffee from the boutique cafe on the corner, oat milk cortado, no sugar, and stride into Westbridge and Hale like I owned the place. I remember the last normal day with perfect clarity. It was a Tuesday in late March. The spring rain had washed the city clean, and everything sparkled under the California sun. I'd won a motion that morning, saved a client $12 million in potential damages. The partner on the case, Harold Westbridge himself, had placed his hand on my shoulder and said, "Carter, you're going places." That night, Daniel cooked dinner, his famous mushroom risotto. Rebecca came over with a bottle of Caymus Cabernet to celebrate my courtroom victory. We sat on our balcony, the city lights twinkling below us, planning a weekend trip to Tahoe. Rebecca was dating someone new, a tech entrepreneur she'd met at a conference. Daniel talked about his latest development project, affordable housing units that would still turn a profit. I listened to their voices mixing with the distant sound of the ocean, feeling complete. How could I have known that they were already planning my destruction? That every smile, every toast, every embrace was a lie? That within 72 hours, everything I'd built would come crashing down, orchestrated by the two people I loved most in the world. But that Tuesday night, sitting between my fiancé and my best friend, watching the lights of Redwood City shimmer like diamonds, I believed I had everything. I believed I was untouchable. I was wrong. The first sign something was wrong came that Friday morning. Harold Westbridge called me into his office, but this time there were no congratulations. Two senior partners flanked him, their faces carved from stone. On his desk lay a folder thick with documents I recognized as confidential client files from the Hartman acquisition. Madeline. Harold's voice was ice. We've discovered these files on an encrypted server traced to your home IP address. Files that were sold to Hartman's competitor for $2 million. My blood turned cold. That's impossible. I would never. Your login credentials were used. The digital forensics team confirmed it. The payment went to an offshore account opened with your social security number. I couldn't breathe. Someone must have stolen my information. Rebecca and Daniel both know my passwords. Miss Sloan brought this to our attention. Harold interrupted. She discovered the breach during a routine audit. Rebecca. My Rebecca. The room spun. They had already called security. Box in hand, I was escorted out like a criminal while my colleagues watched in horror. My company phone, laptop, and keycard were confiscated. By noon, the state bar had been notified. My license to practice law would be suspended, pending investigation. I drove home in shock, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. Daniel would understand. He'd help me figure this out. But when I opened our condo door, I found him in our living room with Rebecca. They weren't surprised to see me home early. They were waiting. Daniel. My voice cracked. He didn't even have the decency to look guilty. It's over. Madeline. This whole charade. Rebecca stood beside him, her hand on his shoulder. My engagement ring, the one I'd helped him choose, sparkled on her finger. How long? I whispered. 6 months, Rebecca said simply. Since the Cabo trip you couldn't make because of work? The room tilted. Every late night, Rebecca had kept me company at the office while Daniel was supposedly traveling. Every weekend, Daniel had business trips, while Rebecca and I went to wine country. They'd been together, laughing at my ignorance. Why? I managed to ask. Daniel's mask finally slipped, revealing something cruel underneath. You were useful. Your reputation, your connections, your brilliant legal mind, they opened doors, but you were always too focused on work to see what was right in front of you. The setup with the files. I started to piece it together. Rebecca smiled, the expression foreign on the face I thought I knew. I've been documenting your irregularities for months. Little things here and there, building a pattern. When I presented my concerns to the partners with evidence of this massive breach, well, they had no choice but to act. But the money, already withdrawn and the account closed, Daniel said. The beauty is, it really did come from selling those files, just not by you. Rebecca had access through your computer. I had the connections to find a buyer. The offshore account was opened using information from documents in this very apartment. Your passport, your tax returns, everything we needed. I felt my knees buckle. The FBI will investigate. They'll find the truth. Will they? Rebecca pulled out her phone, showing me an email sent from my work account 2 weeks ago. You've been so stressed lately. Madeline. Working too hard. These emails to me expressing your financial troubles, your desperation about the wedding costs, your father's medical bills. My father isn't sick. The partners don't know that, neither does the FBI. You needed money fast? You made a terrible decision, and your best friend and fiancé are heartbroken but felt obligated to report it. They'd planned every detail, every angle covered. My reputation was destroyed, my career over, but they weren't done. The condo's in my name, Daniel said. You have 1 hour to pack your things, personal items only. The joint investment accounts were closed yesterday. I had power of attorney, remember? You signed it for the mortgage application. $300,000. My entire savings, liquidated. That's theft. That's recovering assets from a criminal, Rebecca corrected. No firm will hire you now. No bank will trust you. You're radioactive, Madeline. I stood there in the home I'd thought was ours, staring at the two people I'd loved most, and realized I'd been living with strangers. Every meal we'd shared, every laugh, every intimate moment, all of it had been a performance. Why not just leave me? I asked Daniel. Why destroy everything? He shrugged. Leaving would have been messy. This way, Rebecca gets your position at the firm. She's already been promoted to fill your role. I get your money to fund my next development. And you? Well, you get what you deserve for always thinking you were better than everyone else. I loved you both, I said quietly. That was your weakness. Rebecca replied, Love makes you blind. Security arrived exactly an hour later. I left with 2 suitcases and my car. Everything else, my jewelry, the art we'd collected, the furniture I'd carefully selected, stayed behind. That night, I sat in a motel room off Highway 101, my phone buzzing with messages. The legal blogs had already picked up the story. Rising star attorney falls from grace. My parents called 17 times. I couldn't answer. How could I explain that their daughter, who'd done everything right, had lost everything to the two people she'd trusted most? By morning, Westbridge and Hale had released a statement distancing themselves from my criminal activities. The state bar announced a formal investigation. Daniel and Rebecca gave an exclusive interview to the Chronicle, 2 heartbroken victims of my deception. I was 34 years old, and my life was over. Or so they thought. I drove east until California disappeared in my rearview mirror. Through Nevada's desert, across Arizona's painted rocks, finally stopping in a town called Silver Creek, New Mexico. Population 2,837. The kind of place where Madeline Carter, disgraced attorney, could simply vanish. The motel owner, a weathered woman named Rosa, took cash without asking questions. $180 a week for a room with peeling wallpaper and a broken air conditioner. My Mercedes looked absurd in the dirt parking lot, so I sold it to a dealer in Albuquerque for a fraction of its worth. Cash only. No traces. I had $23,000 left after the sale, money from a checking account Daniel hadn't known about, opened before we met. It would have to last until what? I didn't know. I couldn't practice law. My name was poison in any legal database. Background checks would reveal the pending FBI investigation, the bar suspension, the accusations splashed across the internet. The first month, I barely left the motel room. I'd wake at 3 a.m., my body still on corporate lawyer time, and stare at the water-stained ceiling. The silence was suffocating. No buzzing phone with urgent emails, no morning meetings to prepare for, no Daniel beside me, no Rebecca texting about weekend plans. I discovered grief comes in waves, not just for the life I'd lost, but for the people I thought I'd known. The Daniel who'd danced with me in our kitchen to jazz music, had he ever existed? The Rebecca who'd held my hair back when I got food poisoning at that conference in Boston, was that performance too. I grieved for phantom people, relationships that had been one-sided from the start. The local diner, Sal's, had a "Help Wanted" sign. The owner hired me on the spot, desperate for anyone willing to work graveyard shifts. "What's your name, honey?" he asked. "Madison," I lied. "Madison Black." $7.25, an hour plus tips. I'd made more in 6 minutes at Westbridge and Hale, but it was cash, invisible work for an invisible woman. I served coffee to truckers and insomniacs. my soft hands growing calloused from hot plates and harsh detergent. 3 months in, the FBI cleared me of criminal charges, insufficient evidence to prosecute. It didn't matter. The internet never forgets. The damage was done. Westbridge and Hale issued no apology, no retraction. Why would they? The narrative was sealed. Madeline Carter, the attorney who betrayed her firm and friends. I found a studio apartment above a hardware store, $400 a month. Paid in cash. No lease, no questions. The owner, Tom, was a Vietnam vet who recognized the look of someone running from something. He didn't pry. Winter in New Mexico was colder than I'd expected. I had no warm clothes. My designer coats were in Daniel's condo. I bought flannel shirts and work boots from Goodwill, shedding every trace of the woman I'd been. I cut my professionally styled blonde hair short, stopped wearing makeup. The woman in the mirror was a stranger, but maybe that was the point. Nights were the worst. I'd lie on a mattress on the floor, replaying every moment, searching for signs I'd missed. Daniel's phone always face down. Rebecca insisting on using my computer for quick research. The way they'd exchange glances I'd interpreted as friendly. How stupid I'd been. How blind. But somewhere in month 4, lying on that mattress, something shifted. The grief began to harden into something else. Not acceptance, never that. But determination. They'd taken everything because I'd given them the power to do so. I'd been soft, trusting, naive. Those were weaknesses I could eliminate. I started running before dawn, pushing my body until my lungs burned. Physical pain was easier than emotional pain. It had clear limits, clear recovery. I ran through desert trails, past cacti and tumbleweeds, until I could run 10 miles without stopping. The town library had free internet. I began studying. Not law, that door was closed, but finance, cryptocurrency, investment strategies. Things I'd only understood peripherally before. I read about corporate takeovers, hostile acquisitions, the kind of brutal business tactics I'd once helped clients navigate but never truly understood. I waited tables at night and studied during the day. I learned about offshore LLCs, about reputation management, about the dark art of information warfare. Knowledge felt like armor. Each new piece of information, another layer of protection. 8 months in, I'd saved $15,000 from waiting tables and selling everything I had left. I started small, day trading with $1,000, applying everything I'd learned. I lost half of it in the first week, but I learned from each mistake. By month 10, I'd turned that remaining $500 into $8,000. The anger never left. It lived in my chest like a second heartbeat, but I learned to channel it, to use it as fuel. Every pre-dawn run, every 16-hour shift, every successful trade, all of it was building towards something. I didn't know what yet, but I knew I wouldn't stay buried in Silver Creek forever. A year after arriving, Tom found me doing pull-ups on the bar I'd installed in my apartment doorway. "You're not Madison Black," he said simply. I stopped mid-rep, ready to run. "Don't care who you are," he continued. "But whoever did that to you," he gestured at my face, at the hardness that had replaced innocence, "they better pray you never find your way back." That night, I stood in front of my cracked bathroom mirror. The soft lawyer was gone. In her place stood someone leaner, harder, unrecognizable. My hands were rough, my body strong, my mind sharp in ways it had never been. Daniel and Rebecca thought they'd destroyed Madeline Carter. They had, but they'd never met the woman who rose from her ashes. In the darkness of my studio apartment, I whispered a promise to no one and everyone. "I'm coming back. And when I do, you'll wish you'd killed me when you had the chance." The desert wind howled outside, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote answered with its own promise of hunt and hunger. Year 2 in Silver Creek began with a revelation. Tom's nephew, Marcus, was a tech genius running a cryptocurrency consulting firm from his garage. He needed someone who understood contracts, compliance, regulatory frameworks, someone with legal knowledge but without the need for a bar license. I can't practice law, I told him clearly. Don't need you to. Need you to think like a lawyer. Structure deals like a lawyer. But as a business consultant, completely legal. I started part-time, $50 an hour cash. Within 3 months, Marcus made me a partner. We were helping startups navigate the maze of blockchain regulations, and my legal training, the one thing they couldn't steal, proved invaluable. The money started flowing. Not Westbridge and Hale money, but enough. I incorporated my first LLC in Delaware, MBC Consulting. Anonymous. Untraceable to Madeline Carter. I opened bank accounts under the company, built corporate credit, created a new financial identity. By year 3, I'd absorbed everything. I studied Daniel's real estate strategies through public records, every project, every partner, every loan. I analyzed Rebecca's career trajectory at Westbridge and Hale through legal publications. Know your enemy better than they know themselves. Marcus introduced me to his network. Tech entrepreneurs, venture capitalists, people who moved millions with a phone call. They didn't care about Madeline Carter's past. They cared about Madison Black's results. I learned their language, their metrics, their ruthless efficiency. I started my own fund, Carter Strategic Group. The name was deliberate, common enough to be forgettable. But someday, it would mean something to 2 specific people. Initial capital, $100,000, cobbled together from my savings, and 3 silent partners who believed in my vision. The first investment returned 400%. The second, 600%. I wasn't lucky. I was methodical. I studied markets like I'd once studied case law, obsessively, completely. I learned to read patterns, to see opportunities where others saw risk. Year 4 brought transformation. I hired a private investigator, former FBI, someone who understood discretion. He uncovered things about Daniel and Rebecca that made me smile for the first time in years. Daniel's developments were leveraged to the hilt, dependent on continuous new investment. Rebecca had made partner but was struggling, her billables dropping, her reputation built on my destroyed foundation proving unstable. I moved to Phoenix, close enough to California to monitor, far enough to remain invisible. My apartment was modern, minimal, nothing like the cluttered condo I'd shared with Daniel. I hired a personal trainer, a former Marine who didn't ask questions about why I needed to be combat ready. I learned Krav Maga, tactical driving, skills that seemed paranoid until you'd lost everything once. The fund grew. $100,000 became $500,000 became $2 million. I recruited analysts, young and hungry, who didn't know or care who I'd been. We specialized in distressed assets, in finding value where others saw failure. Ironic. Considering I'd been the ultimate distressed asset, I hired a reputation management firm to scrub Madison Black's digital footprint, creating a careful history. Stanford MBA, verified through a contact who owed me a favor. International consulting experience, technically true. A ghost who existed only in carefully curated LinkedIn posts and strategic conference appearances. Year 5 was about connections. I attended investment conferences, always in cities where Daniel and Rebecca wouldn't be. I built relationships with people who mattered, pension fund managers, sovereign wealth fund representatives, the kind of people who could move markets with their decisions. One evening in Scottsdale, at a conference cocktail party, someone mentioned Westbridge and Hale. Shame about that partner, Rebecca Sloan, the man said. Brilliant lawyer, supposedly, but can't seem to close the big deals. I sipped my wine, face neutral. Oh? Word is she got promoted too fast, couldn't handle the pressure. Lost 3 major clients this year. I filed that information away like ammunition. My fund hit $10 million in assets under management, then $25 million. I hired a former Goldman Sachs executive as COO, someone whose name opened doors. Mine couldn't. We moved into real offices in Phoenix's financial district, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the valley. I learned to speak like them, the entitled, the wealthy, the powerful. Dropped the right names, mentioned the right schools, ordered the right wine. But underneath the designer suits, better than anything I'd worn at Westbridge. The careful accent, the practiced smile, the desert-hardened woman remained. Late nights. I'd stand in my office, looking at the city lights, planning, every move calculated, every relationship strategic. I wasn't building a business, I was building a weapon. My CFO, James, noticed my intensity. "You're not building this for money, are you?" "What makes you say that?" "People who want money enjoy it when they get it. You look at our returns like you're checking ammunition." I didn't deny it. Year 6 arrived with a portfolio worth $50 million. I had employees, investors, a reputation in financial circles. Madison Black was becoming someone who mattered. But more importantly, I had intelligence, a network of informants keeping tabs on two people who thought they'd never see me again. Daniel's latest project was in trouble. Cost overruns, permit issues, investors getting nervous. He needed $30 million to complete it or face bankruptcy. Rebecca had just lost another major client. The partnership was questioning her position. They were vulnerable. I stood in my Phoenix office, watching the sunrise paint the desert gold. My reflection in the window showed someone unrecognizable from the woman who'd fled California in a cheap motel. Harder, smarter, infinitely more dangerous. I picked up my phone and called my assistant. "Book me a flight to San Francisco, then set up a meeting with Morrison Development Group. Tell them Carter Strategic might be interested in West Coast opportunities. When would you like to travel?" I smiled, the first real smile in 6 years. Not kind, not warm, but genuine. "Next week, it's time to go home." The desert had forged me into something new. Now it was time to show them what their betrayal had created. The Ritz-Carlton in San Francisco hadn't changed. Same marble lobby, same efficient staff, same breathtaking view of the bay. But everything else was different now. I checked in as Madison Black, CEO of Carter Strategic Group, and the staff treated me like the high-value client I'd become. Redwood City was 40 minutes south. I drove there in a rented Bentley, not because I needed it, but because armor comes in many forms. The familiar streets felt like traveling through a past life. Westbridge and Hale's buildings still dominated the skyline. Daniel's developments scattered throughout downtown. My first meeting was strategic. Morrison Development Group wanted to partner with an investment fund for a massive mixed-use project. They were also Daniel's biggest competitor. "We're impressed by Carter Strategic's track record," Richard Morrison said across the conference table. "But we're curious why you're interested in Redwood specifically." "Undervalued market," I replied smoothly. "Tech money flowing south from San Francisco, but development hasn't caught up. There's opportunity in that gap." Daniel Hayes would disagree. He's got half the city locked up. I smiled. Hayes is over-leveraged. His Bayside Tower project is hemorrhaging money. He'll be looking for emergency funding within 6 months. Morrison's eyes sharpened. "You've done your homework." "I always do." We shook hands on a preliminary agreement. Carter Strategic would provide $40 million in funding for Morrison's development, directly competing with Daniel's projects. But that was just the opening move. The next day, I attended a legal conference in Palo Alto. Rebecca would be speaking on a panel about corporate ethics. The irony wasn't lost on me. I sat in the back row, designer sunglasses on, watching her. She looked tired, older. The confident swagger I remembered was gone, replaced by something defensive. During Q&A, someone asked about the challenges of maintaining ethical standards under pressure. "Integrity is non-negotiable," Rebecca said. "Even when it means making difficult decisions about colleagues or friends." I almost laughed. After her panel, I watched her network desperately, practically throwing business cards at potential clients. The woman who'd stolen my life was struggling to hold onto her own. Week 2. I orchestrated an accidental encounter, the St. Regis Hotel Bar, where Redwood City's financial elite gathered after work. I knew Daniel would be there. He always was on Thursdays, courting investors. I sat at the bar, scrolling through financial reports on my tablet. In my peripheral vision, I saw him enter. Still handsome, still commanding attention, but stress lines carved deep around his eyes. He ordered his usual, Macallan 18, neat. When he glanced my way, there was no recognition. Why would there be? The polished executive at the bar looked nothing like the broken woman he'd discarded. Madison Black, the bartender said, placing my wine down. Your table is ready whenever you're ready. Daniel's head turned at the name. Carter's strategic group had been making waves in California real estate circles. He knew who Madison Black was, even if he didn't know who she really was. Excuse me, he said, approaching with his practiced smile. Madison Black? I'm Daniel Hayes. I believe we're in the same industry. I looked up slowly, letting him see expensive sunglasses, perfectly styled hair, the kind of understated wealth that whispered rather than shouted. Mr. Hayes, I said coolly. I know who you are. I heard Carter Strategic is looking at Redwood City projects. Looking at opportunities, I corrected. Your market has interesting vulnerabilities. His smile tightened. I wouldn't call them vulnerabilities. No, the Bayside Tower project, 18 months behind schedule, $20 million over budget, primary investor threatening to pull out. What would you call that? The color drained from his face. That information wasn't public. How did you? I make it my business to know everything about markets I enter. Mr. Hayes, everything? I stood, gathering my things. Enjoy your drink. As I walked away, I heard him calling someone, voice urgent. Good. Let him wonder. Let him worry. The next phase required precision. Through shell companies and intermediaries, I began buying shares in Daniel's investor pool. Small percentages, nothing alarming individually, but collectively giving me influence. I hired a forensic accountant to review publicly available records of Daniel's projects. What we found was beautiful. Sloppy accounting, corner cutting that bordered on fraud, enough to interest regulatory bodies if properly presented. For Rebecca, I took a different approach. I had my team pose as potential clients, scheduling meetings, then canceling last minute. Wasting her time, her resources, her credibility. Her billables dropped further. The partnership noticed. 3 weeks into my return, I attended the Redwood City Children's Hospital Gala, the social event of the year. Everyone would be there. I wore a black Valentino gown that cost more than I'd made in 6 months at the diner. My hair was platinum now, styled differently. Diamonds, real ones, caught the light. I looked like money, like power, like everything they'd thought they'd taken from me. The ballroom doors opened, and I walked in alone. Heads turned, whispers started. Who was Madison Black? Why was she here? I made my way through the room, introducing myself to key players, the mayor, city council members, major developers. All of them eager to meet the mysterious investor who'd partnered with Morrison. Then I saw them. Together, as always. Daniel in his tuxedo, Rebecca in red, playing the power couple they'd always wanted to be. Our eyes met across the room. Rebecca recognized me first. I saw it happen, the widening eyes, the sharp intake of breath, the hand gripping Daniel's arm. He followed her gaze, and his champagne glass slipped, catching it just before it fell. I smiled and raised my glass to them from across the room, a silent toast to their worst nightmare. They tried to leave, but I'd anticipated that. The mayor chose that moment to introduce me to the crowd as a major new investor in the city's future. I gave a brief speech about believing in second chances, about rebuilding after setbacks, about how destruction often preceded the greatest opportunities. Every word was aimed at them. When I stepped down from the podium, they were trapped between me and the exit. I approached slowly, savoring each step. Daniel, Rebecca. My voice was warm honey over broken glass. It's been too long. Rebecca's face was white. Madeline. Madison, I corrected. Madison Black. Madeline Carter died 6 years ago. You should know. You killed her. The chess game began that night at the gala. Every move had been calculated months in advance, but they didn't know that yet. They only knew that I was back, transformed, and dangerously positioned in their world. Daniel tried to recover first, his salesman's instincts kicking in. Madison, I heard about your fund. Impressive work. Everything I learned about betrayal and ruthlessness. I learned from the best teachers, I replied, looking between them. Rebecca couldn't speak. Her hand trembled around her champagne flute. The woman who'd so smoothly destroyed me was rattled by my mere presence. We should talk, Daniel said quietly. Privately. Oh, we will. But on my schedule, not yours. I turned to Rebecca. Partner at Westbridge and Hale. How wonderful. Though I heard you lost the Steinberg account last month. And Patterson Industries. And Chen Technologies. Such a shame when clients lose confidence. Her eyes widened. That was you? The market is unforgiving to those who can't deliver, I said simply. But you know all about destroying careers, don't you? Other guests were watching, sensing drama. I smiled brilliantly and moved on, leaving them standing there like statues. The next morning, Phase 1 began. Through my shell company, I submitted a formal complaint to the California State Contractors License Board about building code violations in Daniel's Bayside Tower project. My forensic accountant had found enough discrepancies to trigger a full investigation. Simultaneously, I had my lawyers file a civil suit against an unnamed defendant for fraud and theft, related to accounts opened in 2019. I didn't name Daniel yet, just let the filing sit in public records where his investors would find it. For Rebecca, I was more surgical. My team leaked to legal blogs that several former clients were considering malpractice suits against a prominent Westbridge and Hale partner for inadequate representation. No names, just enough detail for people to speculate. Daniel called my office 17 times that day. I didn't answer. Instead, I met with his primary investor, Howard Chen of Chen Capital. We'd been introduced at the gala, and he was intrigued by Carter Strategic's proposal to buy out distressed real estate assets. The Bayside Tower is bleeding money, I told him over lunch. Hayes is hiding the true extent of the overruns. You could lose everything, or you could sell your position to us at 60 cents on the dollar. Today, that's a significant loss. Better than total loss when the state investigation reveals what I know it will. Howard's eyes narrowed. You know something. I slid a folder across the table, just enough evidence to show Daniel's fraudulent practices without revealing my sources. Howard reviewed it, his face darkening. He lied to us. He's good at that. By close of business, Chen Capital had withdrawn from all of Daniel's projects and sold their positions to Carter Strategic. I now owned 30% of Daniel's debt. That evening, Rebecca appeared at my hotel. Security called up. Should they allow her? Send her up. She looked haggard, designer suit wrinkled, makeup smeared. The composed woman who'd orchestrated my downfall was crumbling. What do you want? She asked. Justice or revenge? I haven't decided which sounds better. We can make this right. I can pay you. With what? Your partnership is hanging by a thread. 3 more clients are leaving next week. They just haven't told you yet. Her face crumpled. How do you know? Because I convinced them to leave, just like you convinced everyone I was a criminal. Madeline, please. That's not my name anymore. You killed Madeline. Remember, I'm just here to return the favor. She tried another angle. Daniel forced me. He manipulated me. I laughed, sharp and bitter. Stop. You were sleeping with him for 6 months before you destroyed me. Every Thursday when you were working late with me. You were with him after. I have hotel receipts, credit card records. You planned every detail together. You investigated us? I learned from the best. You taught me that trust is weakness, that everyone is an enemy waiting to strike. Valuable lessons. She sank into a chair. What happens now? Now you get to experience what I did. The free fall, the helplessness, watching everything you built disappear while everyone believes you deserve it. The FBI cleared you. You could have come back. To what? A destroyed reputation? You made sure of that. The internet is forever. Rebecca. Every search of my name brings up the accusations you planted. I walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. But you did me a favor. Madeline Carter was soft, trusting, weak. You created Madison Black, someone who understands that business is war and mercy is expensive. So you'll destroy us? No, you'll destroy yourselves. I'm just providing the opportunity. Daniel's company will collapse under investigation. Your career will end with malpractice suits. I don't have to do anything except watch. There must be something you want, some deal. There is one thing. I turned back to her. A full written confession, everything you did, how you did it, why, notarized, sent to Westbridge and Hale, the State Bar, and the FBI. Her face went white. That would end my career. Yes. I'd be disbarred. I might face criminal charges. Possibly. And if I do this, I stop actively destroying you. I don't help you. But I stop the bleeding. You'll still fall. But maybe you'll survive it. Like I did. She was crying now, mascara running. I have 48 hours to decide. 24. And Rebecca? That engagement ring you're wearing, the one Daniel gave you after stealing it back from me? I want it. She looked at the 3-carat diamond, then slowly removed it, placing it on the table. After she left, I picked up the ring, feeling its weight. I'd once thought it represented love, commitment, future. Now I saw it for what it was, a prop in their performance. I opened the window and threw it into the night. Somewhere far below, $30,000 of lies disappeared into darkness. Tomorrow, I would call Daniel's secondary investors. The day after, I would meet with Westbridge and Hale's managing partners. By week's end, the dominoes would start falling faster than they could prop them up. But tonight, I stood in my hotel room, finally allowing myself to feel the satisfaction I'd denied for 6 years. They'd taken everything from someone who'd loved them. Now they'd learn what happened when that someone came back without the capacity to love at all. The Redwood City Annual Charity Gala was 3 weeks away, the perfect stage for the final act. The same event where they'd once planned my destruction while toasting to our fake friendship would witness their complete unraveling. Rebecca broke first. Her confession arrived at my lawyer's office within 24 hours, detailing everything: the affair, the stolen files, the fabricated evidence. My attorney had it notarized and copies prepared for strategic distribution. But I held them back. Timing was everything. Daniel was harder to crack. He'd always been a fighter. But now he was fighting on multiple fronts. The state investigation had frozen his permits. His investors were fleeing. Construction on Bayside Tower had stopped completely. He finally called from a number I didn't recognize. "We need to meet," he said without preamble. "The Meridian Bar, noon." He was already there when I arrived, looking like he'd aged 5 years in 3 weeks. The confident developer was gone, replaced by a desperate man watching his empire crumble. "You win," he said immediately. "What do you want?" "What I've always wanted, justice." "The FBI cleared you of criminal charges, not in the court of public opinion. You made sure of that." He leaned forward. "I'll make a public statement. Say we were wrong, that you were innocent. Too late for that. Your word means nothing now. Then what? You want money? I'll pay." "With what?" "You're leveraged beyond recovery. Bayside Tower needs $30 million just to avoid bankruptcy." His jaw clenched. "You know I can recover from this. I always do." "Not this time." I pulled out my phone, showing him a document. "This is a purchase agreement. Carter Strategic will buy Bayside Tower for $20 million, enough to pay your most aggressive creditors and avoid personal bankruptcy." "That's $40 million less than I've invested." "It's $20 million more than you'll have when the state liens hit next week." He stared at the number like it was a death sentence. "This is everything. My entire company." "Yes. You planned all of this. From the moment you came back. From the moment you threw me out of our home with nothing but 2 suitcases. His mask finally cracked completely. "It was just business, Madeline. You were collateral damage. Just business." I stood. "You slept next to me for 2 years while planning my destruction. You proposed to me knowing you were going to destroy me. That wasn't business. That was cruelty. And this isn't. This is consequences. I left the agreement on the table. You have until tomorrow night to sign. After that, I let the investigations play out naturally. The next evening, both documents were in my possession. Rebecca's confession and Daniel's signed purchase agreement, but I wasn't done. I hired the best event planning team in the city. The charity gala would have a surprise addition to the program. A special presentation from Carter's strategic group about redemption and rebuilding in business. The ballroom at the Four Seasons was packed. Everyone who mattered in Redwood City was there. Daniel and Rebecca arrived separately. The power couple facade finally abandoned. I wore white, a deliberate choice. The color of new beginnings, of clean slates. The mayor introduced me as a major donor and invited me to speak. I took the stage, looking out at the sea of faces, finding Daniel and Rebecca in the crowd. 6 years ago, I lost everything, I began. My career at Westbridge and Hale, my reputation, my future. All destroyed by false accusations of embezzlement and fraud. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Some remembered the scandal. The FBI investigated and found no evidence of wrongdoing. But by then, the damage was done. I lost my legal license, my savings, everything I'd built. I clicked a remote. Behind me. A screen showed newspaper headlines from my downfall. Tonight, I want to share 2 documents with you. The screen changed, showing Rebecca's confession. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. This is a notarized confession from Rebecca Sloan, partner at Westbridge and Hale, admitting to fabricating evidence against me while conducting an affair with my then-fiancé, Daniel Hayes. Rebecca tried to leave, but the doors were blocked by security, my security. The second document, I continued, as the screen changed again, is the transfer of ownership of Hayes Development to Carter Strategic Group, necessitated by Mr. Hayes's fraudulent practices in securing investments. Daniel's investors were all present, watching their suspicions confirmed on a 20-foot screen. Why share this publicly? I asked the silent room. Because 6 years ago, my destruction was public. My humiliation was public. Justice should be equally visible. I looked directly at them. Daniel Hayes and Rebecca Sloan taught me that trust is vulnerability, that love is weakness, that only power matters. I've become an excellent student. The presentation ended with a slide showing Carter Strategic's plans for Bayside Tower, affordable housing for families displaced by gentrification, using Daniel's project to actually help the community he'd only pretended to care about. But, unlike them, I believe in building something better from the ashes. Every dollar of profit from their former assets will go to funding legal aid for those falsely accused of crimes, turning their cruelty into someone else's second chance. I stepped down from the podium to thunderous applause. The district attorney was already moving toward Daniel. The Westbridge and Hale managing partners surrounded Rebecca. I walked through the crowd, accepting congratulations, watching my former life's destroyers become pariahs in real time. Daniel caught my arm as I passed. You've ruined us. No, you ruined yourselves the moment you decided I was expendable. I just returned the favor. Rebecca was crying, mascara streaming. We're sorry. No. You're sorry you got caught. There's a difference. I looked at them one last time, the man I'd loved, the friend I'd trusted. They seemed smaller now, diminished. Or maybe I'd just grown beyond them. Goodbye, I said simply, and walked away. The valet brought my Bentley. As I drove from the hotel, I saw police cars arriving. By morning, Daniel would be under arrest for fraud. Rebecca would be disbarred. Their reputations would be destroyed beyond recovery. I'd won. Completely. Thoroughly. Devastatingly. But sitting in my car, looking at the city lights, I felt empty. Not satisfied, not vindicated, just empty. They'd taken everything from me 6 years ago. Now I'd returned the favor. We were even. But I would never be who I was before. That woman, trusting, loving, soft, was gone forever. In her place sat Madison Black, successful, powerful, alone. Perhaps that was their final victory. They'd turned me into them. The morning after the gala, every news outlet in California carried the story. Dramatic reversal. Falsely accused attorney returns to expose corporate fraud. The headlines were vindicating, but I didn't need them anymore. I'd already won. Daniel was arrested at dawn. Federal agents raided his offices, seizing computers, files, everything. The fraud charges would stick. I'd made sure of that. His assets were frozen, his passport confiscated. The man who'd built an empire on lies watched it crumble in hours. Rebecca's disbarment was swift. Westbridge and Hale released a statement distancing themselves, claiming they'd been deceived. Her confession was forwarded to the FBI, who reopened my case, this time with her as the defendant. She faced potential charges for conspiracy, fraud, and obstruction of justice. I stood in my new office, the top floor of what used to be Daniel's building, watching the city wake up. My phone buzzed constantly. Interview requests, partnership offers, invitations to speak at conferences. Madison Black had become the story of the year, the woman who rose from ashes to claim perfect revenge. But I ignored them all. My CFO, James, brought me the final numbers. The Bayside Tower conversion will begin next month. The affordable housing project is fully funded. Will help over 500 families. Good. The Legal Aid Foundation is established. First cases will be reviewed next week. Perfect. He hesitated. You did it. You got everything back and more. How does it feel? I turned from the window. Like justice. But that wasn't entirely true. Justice would have been never losing everything in the first place. This was something else, balance restored through equal destruction. A knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. My assistant entered. Ms. Black, there's someone here to see you. She says she's your mother. I hadn't seen my parents since the scandal. Too ashamed, too broken, then too focused on revenge to reconnect. My mother walked in, older but still elegant. She looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw her recognize the stranger her daughter had become. Madeline, she said softly. It's Madison now. I know. I saw the news. She approached slowly. We looked for you. For years. I know. Are you happy? The question hung between us. Happy? I was successful. Powerful. Wealthy beyond my old dreams. I destroyed those who destroyed me. But happy? I'm satisfied, I said finally. She touched my face gently. My daughter was happy. She laughed. She loved. She trusted. That woman was weak. That woman was human. We stood there, mother and daughter, strangers who shared blood but little else. She left with my phone number, a promise to call, to try to bridge the gap between who I'd been and who I'd become. That evening, I received 2 final communications. Daniel, from federal detention. I hope you're satisfied. You've become everything you once hated. Rebecca from her emptied apartment. We created a monster. They were both right and both wrong. I hadn't become them. I'd become something worse, someone who understood cruelty but chose to weaponize it for justice. They'd destroyed for greed. I'd destroyed for balance. The next morning, I did something unexpected. I called Harold Westbridge. I want to discuss something, I said. A proposal. We met at his office, the same one where he'd fired me 6 years ago. Ms. Black, he said carefully. Or should I say, Ms. Carter? Black is fine. Carter is dead. What can I do for you? I placed a check on his desk. $5 million. To establish a pro bono division at Westbridge and Hale, specifically for those falsely accused of corporate crimes. His eyes widened. That's generous. It's strategic. Your firm's reputation took a hit from the scandal. This helps restore it, but there are conditions. Of course. The division bears my name, the Madeline Carter Justice Initiative, a permanent reminder of what happens when you destroy innocent people. He understood the weight of it. His firm would forever carry the name of someone they'd wronged. Agreed. I stood to leave, then paused. Harold, do you remember what you said when you fired me? I said many things. You said I'd never practice law again, never work in this city again, that my name would be poison. He shifted uncomfortably. You were right, I continued. Madeline Carter never practiced law again, but Madison Black doesn't need to. I own half this city now. I left Westbridge and Hale for the last time, my heels clicking on the marble floors that had once been my world. The sunset painted Redwood City gold as I stood on my office balcony. Below, the city pulsed with life, people rushing home, living their dreams and disasters, trusting and betraying in equal measure. My phone rang. An unknown number. Madison Black. It's Tom. From Silver Creek. The hardware store owner who'd given me shelter when I had nothing. Tom. Saw you on the news. Figured you'd want to know. That diner where you worked? Sal's? He's losing it. Can't make rent. I smiled, the first genuine smile in months. Tell Sal I'll buy it. Full asking price. He can stay on as manager if he wants. You don't forget, do you? No, I don't forget anything. Not kindness, not cruelty, nothing. After we hung up, I stood alone as night fell over the city. In the distance, Daniel's Bayside Tower stood half-finished, soon to be transformed into something useful. Rebecca's former office at Westbridge and Hale was already being cleared out. They'd taken everything from me, my career, my love, my faith in people, my innocence. I'd returned and reclaimed it all, except the last two. Those were gone forever. The price of surviving betrayal. But I'd taken everything from them too. Their money, their reputations, their futures, their freedom. An eye for an eye. A life for a life. They'd taught me that love was weakness. They were wrong. Love wasn't weakness. It was vulnerability. And vulnerability could be eliminated, carved out like a tumor, leaving someone stronger but less human. I raised my glass of wine to the night sky, toasting no one and everyone. They took everything from me, I said to the darkness. But I came back. I took it all back. Every piece, every dollar, every ounce of dignity. I didn't leave them anything, not even hope. The city glittered below, full of promise and betrayal, love and cruelty, trust and deception. I'd won. Completely. So why did victory taste like ashes? Perhaps because revenge, even perfect revenge, can't restore what was truly lost. It can balance the scales, but it can't turn back time. It can destroy your enemies, but it can't resurrect who you were before they made you need to destroy them. They'd stolen everything from Madeline Carter. Madison Black had stolen it back. But in the end, we were all thieves, and everything we'd stolen had already been broken beyond repair. Thank you so much for listening to this story of betrayal and revenge. I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from. Please share in the comments below so we can connect. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more compelling narratives. What would you have done in Madeline's position? Share your thoughts below. I read every comment and love hearing your perspectives on these complex stories of justice and retribution.